So, guys, I want to review the Oscar nominated short film documentary, Grandma and Grandma. It has another name for it. I believe it's in Asian or Chinese. And I believe it's either in Chinese or Taiwanese. Pardon me. But it's about like these two grandmother. These about these two women that live together. I'm not sure. I think they're like best friends, not lesbians. And also, I believe one of them is actually the grandmother the director, really. But it was really just about like these two women that are very like quirky and silly. Like one of them has issue with farts, one of them is kind of arrogant. They're just into just cosplaying, I would say. Like where they kind of dress up like hip hop characters, and they also just like act silly and quirky. But there are messages about how they they say in life the only fair thing is death and sickness. And that's a very interesting take, because obviously we all grow old and die. I mean, we all grow old and die when if we are lucky to reach old age. Yes, there are people who die of you know other ways, either suicide, murder, car crash, so on and so on. But if you live to old age, that's usually how most people go out. And that's kind of an interesting observation on life. But yes, the only thing that's fair is that if you live to old age, that everybody dies from like just sickness and old age, um, as they said. And I also kind of think that what I like about this is that the cinematography is amazing. I think they're well, I think what they said is that they have some agoraphobia. If I'm using the word right, agoraphobia means fear of going outside. But the issue is that they read the newspaper and hear all these little horrific stories. So it's interesting that they kind of parallel their feelings about not being outside, and their issue of eventually facing death, because they're both in their like early 90s. That the whole that they feel that the whole movie takes place in a like very dark house, that you see a lot of silhouettes, really, so not the lights are not really on, so it kind of makes you think of funeral homes. Like, unfortunately, when my grandmother passed away, when they lay the body, usually those homes like have no windows or anything like that, really, and like it's kind of really dim. And I think that that's usually how they do it. I'm not sure why, that type of style, but I think that it kind of feels like you're in a tomb, really. And I really think that they emulate that with this movie. That it kind of gives you a feeling of, what, it's not really just it's not really just, I think on the surface, there are a lot of people who don't like this film, and I'll explain why in a minute. But it is about people who are facing death. It is about people who are just passing on their wisdom. Just get the most out of life. I think at any point, and then also that sometimes when I think in retrospect, you got to say, what, I'm 36 years old. I've lived a lot in 36 years, so I'm happy to be alive and be like, what, I still have the ability to kind of continue on. If I die in 5 years, if I die in like 25 years, it's all a blessing, because, of what I can do, really. So, and I think that's what they're saying. It like in their 90s, they're very blessed to have lived that long, because obviously most people don't get that. Or every single couple of, I think they said every couple of months they get a call from somebody saying that somebody they knew for a long time has died, really. So it's just, while it creates sadness, it also creates a sense of, also feeling grateful that they can continue on as long as they can, really. But I do think that I do agree with what a lot of people say, that it's definitely a very controversial documentary, because it's not really a documentary. It's more of a biopic, where it's about people, and then also too, these women have, like, one of them has an issue with farting. They're kind of like silly and quirky. So a lot of people may say, oh, well, they're just cute little old ladies. So obviously they're going to win, because obviously they're going to win because, the Oscars may just feel that way. And then I'm not sure how to say this, but it seems like every other documentary was more formal. It was more about people talking about a serious issue, like Little Barbershop, Arkansas, economic, no, economic unfairness and banking, and racial banking. The other one, the island in between, is about like the issue of an island between China and Taiwan, and there is also another one about the ABC's learning, talking about book banning, and there's a fourth one that I saw. I don't remember the name of it. Pardon me. Just pardon me about that. But this one's more about like just two people in their lives, really. So it does kind of stand out as a sore thumb. And usually, sometimes with the Oscars, that's usually how they vote. They may vote for the one that's a little bit different, but this is kind of like the one that's not traditional documentary. I live with a brother with mental health issues, and he's also funny and quirky, inconsiderate. He's a very dimensional character. But if I was to make a 30-minute documentary about him and show his antics, should I be winning best documentary? And I wouldn't really do it. And then also too, like they're doing interviews, they're doing all that like Oscar whoring, which is what everybody does. Oscar whoring, where you talk to the press and all that. So I do think that they have a high chance of winning this. When I actually think it should be a film that's a little bit more formal and what a documentary is. It's really just bringing attention to an issue, an issue. Sometimes an issue can be a person, but it's usually an important person, not really a relative or whatever. So I do understand how that's controversial. And I also do understand too that, honestly, gaining a lot out of life, you can die any minute. Being appreciative for how long you live. That every, I think, stage in our life has a point of sadness because, I think as we get older, people we know and love and care about die. Those are really things that have been there. Those are really messages that are older than the tombs. So I mean, older than the pyramids. So I do think that that's also another thing people can look at is like that's not really such a that's not really such a deep or insightful message because that's kind of a timeless one. But sometimes the timeless messages are important, even though they're very, very repetitive and everything like that. So I wouldn't really pick it, but I know how the Oscar picks things, and they may just pick this film. But overall, I think the cinematography is strong. Overall, they're very they're very charismatic characters, and sometimes that's all you really need, and that's that really. But I also will say that, and I think this is important for me to say. I'll take a minute, 1 or 2 minutes of my time here, but sometimes we may disagree with the films that win, or we may say, okay, well, here's a film that doesn't really follow the traditional formula. Like I remember, like I think it was like last year, the film that won best short film was about this guy who his family gets kidnapped, he gets beaten up, and then he starts rapping to the camera, and he was like stumbling over his words. And I felt very offended because I was like, oh, well, this shit's actually winning. Or I've done the 48-hour film project. And I remember, like, for the New Haven film project, there was this little girl who she had her head down. She was saying, you can't leave in a movie. And that's all she did. And there were other people, like, who did acting there were other child actors who actually did a way better job. And she actually won and other things like that. So, it's just like that happens a lot in filmmaking. Sometimes it is political. We all know this. Or sometimes, people just pick things for different reasons. Sometimes there may be a sense of, I really think it may come down to politics. It also may come down to charisma of a person, even though they're not doing as good as other people. But we should still just, support films and talk about films and review films. And also, when I talk about what I don't like about this film, I'm happy that I'm doing that because that's all important. But I think to me, as I've learned, awards really don't matter because if they pick a film that's really kind of sucky. It's more of a statement of how they pick things, you know. And I think that everybody has different tastes. I don't have to respect other people's. I don't have to respect what wins if I don't like it, but I have to tolerate it, if that makes sense. I have to tolerate it, but I don't have to respect it. You know, so I don't respect this film for the sense that I think the other films did a more deeper job and talked about more very insightful issues, and definitely those films I think can change the world. I think this film is just, you know, a repeating of a timeless message. Get the most out of life. You know, every stage of life has sadness. You know, death is inevitable. Sometimes, you know, you make friends later in life, and that's very helpful as you ride the last ride, which is going into death, really. So, you know, it's grandma and grandma. I really just think that, it is what it is. It's definitely not my cup of tea for a documentary, but I can really appreciate the cinematography. I can appreciate the timeless messages. I can appreciate just a reminder we all need to get what we can out of life, and sometimes, just like having a little bit of fun and not taking life so seriously or yourself so seriously. Sometimes that's the best way to live it, and I think that despite maybe this not being the type of documentary that I like, I'm very proud of myself for at least giving it a chance and at least meditating on its meanings, because, I think in the past I really wasn't like that when I saw films that I disagreed with or I felt were kind of nominated for Oscars and didn't really deserve it. So I'm getting the most out of life as well by just appreciating, films that I agree with and disagree with. All right, I'll talk to you later. Bye bye.